This is Working for Progress, a podcast that connects us through conversations about how we craft our working lives and make progress. We'll be joined by our communities from Tribe Porty and Keystone. Tribe Porty is a community co-working space and creative hub. We are full of entrepreneurs, social enterprises, freelancers, charities, and SMEs. Keystone is the other social enterprise which supports women to reimagine their working lives. We do this by providing a holistic approach to business through courses, programs, mentoring, group coaching, and events.
Welcome to today's conversation. I'm Alice, the community manager at Tribe Porty.
And I'm Dani, founder and director of both Tribe Porty and Keystone.
Here at Working for Progress, we're all about connecting good people, sharing their stories, their challenges, and the progress they make for themselves and for others. We hope this podcast challenges your ways of thinking and inspires you to work for progress.
Working for Progress starts with simple pleasures, finishes in awe, and meanders through career journeys in between. Today we have Kaigan Carrie. Kaigan is a co-founder of Rise of Happiness, a movement to become happier. Kaigan also holds a master's degree in Criminology and is the host of her own podcast, Evolving Prisons, a podcast dedicated to bringing awareness to our prisons, the people in them, and the humanity and inhumanity which can exist in these situations. So welcome.
Thank you for having me.
This evening we have Kaigan hosting our Tribe Talks, and this is why we've come along, and I can't wait to learn more about you.
Oh, thank you.
We'll start out really gently. I suppose we'd love to hear your 5 simple pleasures.
Oh, chocolate.
Yes.
Dogs.
Cool.
Travel. Learning and growing. And happiness/prison, because they are my 2 passions.
Love it. That's a very different
very different
slash there.
Yeah.
But I can't wait to learn more. I'm very interested in that as well. But kind of to get more of a picture of who you are and why you do what you do, would love to hear about your values and how your values kind of underpin your work that you're doing now.
Of course. So my core values are connection, growth, health, and freedom. So I've always been passionate about the criminal justice system, which is where the prison part comes in. And you'd think happiness and prison aren't at all entwined. However, for me, prisons are supposed to be a place of growth and transformation for the people who live and work there. And I think the only way we can do that is by bringing more humanity to prisons. And within that, I think, comes happiness and joy. And I feel like they do overlap a lot more. And the reason Rise of Happiness exists is because me and Rob, my partner who owns it with me, we both were on paths in our lives where we were chasing things that we thought would make us happy and we weren't happy. So we wanted to get back to basics and do things that really made us happy. And by doing that, we wanted to also just give happiness to other people, which is why we have the free wellbeing magazine and full of uplifting and inspirational stories. So it kind of came from not following my values, has brought me to intentionally following them and creating the life that I live now.
I love that. How long have you been running Rise of Happiness?
So we started Rise of Happiness just last year.
Okay.
So our first magazine was published in August last year. So it's very new venture.
Mm. And happiness kind of being a big word. I'd love to hear your thoughts on happiness, your definition of what you mean when you say happiness.
So for me, it's just feeling joyful and feeling abundant and grateful for the life that we live. So it's that feeling in your stomach of just being so grateful for your existence. For me, when I was very little, I had meningococcal septicemia. So I almost died when I was 2. So I just naturally feel very grateful to be living, and I'm very aware of how finite life is. So happiness is just those moments where you're doing things that just genuinely bring you joy. It could be something massive, or it could be something as little as looking out the window and watching a plane in the sky. It's just something that makes you feel good and alive.
Yeah, I love that. And kind of I'm hearing gratefulness and contentment and knowing, I suppose, that you can't be happy all the time, but the goal is to recognize that, you know, striving for that sense of well-being is part of what you're trying to do.
Yeah, and that's the thing. I feel like happiness can sometimes seem a bit toxic, where it's almost like you're expected to be happy all the time. And you can't, because our emotions are so intertwined that if you prevent yourself or try to stop yourself from feeling the negative emotions, you'll naturally limit the extent to which you can feel the happy emotions because of emotional interconnectedness. So it's recognizing that you're not going to be happy all the time. But for us at Rise of Happiness, it's about doing more things in your day that make you happy. So, I hate doing the food shop with a passion, but I still need to do it. But it's maybe reading for 20 minutes or going for a walk or something. Because I believe if we do more little things each day that make us happy, then it's of course going to lead to a happy life over time.
Yeah, I love that. Thank you. I just wanted to elaborate more because I think there's so much to it, isn't there, in terms of that term itself. So kind of going back to your kind of career journey, what is the worst or most random job you've ever had?
Okay, so the worst one was working in retail, because not that there's anything wrong with retail, but it just was not me whatsoever. Being told to approach customers to see if they need help, and that just, it used to turn my stomach. I just do not feel comfortable doing that, because I'm the type of shopper where if I need help, I'll ask you. But random, probably I moved to America to go to summer camp. I did that a couple of summers. And I got a call on the Wednesday asking if I would go out to summer camp because somebody had broken their leg and couldn't go. So I went downstairs at 19 and told my parents, I need to quit my retail job. I've been offered a job in America, and I moved 2 days later. Wow. And I was a camp counsellor there, but it was quite random because it was for underprivileged children. So it wasn't one of the big fancy camps that you see. And a lot of them couldn't afford to come to camp. So some weeks I'd do travelling day camp. So I'd travel to different parts of the state, and it would actually require me to stay with strangers. Oh. So I would have to stay with these beautiful people who opened their home to me, but me and a colleague would have to stay with strangers. So I think I stayed with about 6 different families that I'd never met before.
Wow.
Yeah, it was fun.
What part of America?
So the first time I was in Illinois, okay, and the second time I was in Missouri. So just outside Chicago the first time.
Okay. Well, I bet you learned a lot at 19, particularly.
Yeah,
new space. I suppose let's hear about the biggest risks that you've taken in your working life, and perhaps, what you've learned so far or what led you to that decision.
So I was working in the criminal justice system in Scotland. I used to work for the Scottish Court Service, and I loved that job. It was aligned because it was criminal justice. I got to speak with incredible sheriffs and learn so much from them. But I quit the job to move to Australia with no job lined up in Australia. So I always knew I wanted to work in criminal justice, but quit that to move. And in Australia, it took me 4 months to get a job in criminal justice. So I got a job working for the Office of Public Prosecution. But it took a long time because of the visa I was on. The government can be very difficult to get into. So it was a big risk because I left criminal justice to have no job. And I was nervous. It was very scary. But I guess I learned just to always trust your gut, because I got offered quite a lot of jobs before that just weren't aligned. And when I turned them down, I thought, am I doing the wrong thing? And I would beat myself up. But then it did work out, and I did learn a lot from the job that I got. So I guess just trust your gut and don't settle for less than what you know you want in life.
Mm-hmm. How long were you in Australia?
I was just there for a year because I would have had to do farm work for 3 months and to extend my visa. And I take my hat off to anybody who could do that, but not for me. Bugs and things.
Fair enough.
Not for me.
And what got you into criminology in the first place? Or
for as long as I can remember, I've been very passionate about criminal justice. I used to want to be a police officer when I was younger, but core value of freedom, I knew it wouldn't bring freedom. So I did my degree, and it was actually a degree based around policing and like forensic science and penal institutions. So at that point, I didn't know what I was going to do with it. And then that's where my passion for prison reform came. So it just kind of unfolded from there.
Yeah. If you could do anything to the prison systems at the minute, what's the biggest thing you'd love to change, or completely change it, or what do you think? I mean, it's a big question.
Yeah.
Maybe one thing.
Okay. Well, the entire thing I would want to change. Yeah. However, one thing that I think is so important is that we change how our prison officers are trained and how they're looked at. So right now they only get between 6 and 12 weeks training. I did some research in this. I won't bore you too much, but I interviewed governors in Norway because they have one of the most humane prison systems in the whole world. And they said, where you're just giving staff 7 weeks training, it's going to fail, because what you put into something, you get out of it. So I think they need a degree, they need a lengthy training. They also need to be seen in the same light as nurses and social workers. And society needs to look at them better, because I think that will then attract better talent as well. We have a lot of incredible prison officers, but I think we could also have more incredible prison officers, but people choose not to do it because it's seen as quite a low status job. And apart from that, I think humanity, we need to change the way we see people in prison. A lot of them don't deserve to be there because of our sentencing laws. They can be quite strict, so we see these repeat offenders going in who aren't actually a risk to society. They just need help to turn their lives around. So just bringing humanity to the people in there and understanding that a lot of them are actually just very underprivileged and grew up in poverty and chaos, and they actually don't know any better, and if they did, they would behave better. So just extending compassion to the people in there and doing what we can to change the narrative around them.
Yeah, that sounds very sensible. So other than Norway, have you experienced other countries or other ways of doing the prison systems that you find we could learn from in Scotland?
Yeah, well, so I know Norway particularly well because that's where I did my research, and I went and visited a prison there not too long ago, a few months ago. But Finland does it incredibly well as well. So people in prison who they will actually get released on tags, and they'll go to school or university. Even though they're in prison, they will actually go and mix in schools and universities with other people. And some of the teachers, I spoke to a social worker. I was in Italy last month at the World Happiness Summit, and I spoke to a social worker from Finland while I was there. And she said that a lot of the teachers get quite panicky that they know there's a prisoner in the classroom learning. And as the social worker said, she said they're the safest person in your classroom because they're going back to prison tonight. They're on a tag. We know where they are at all times. Like, you should actually be more scared of other people who are in your classroom because we know nothing about them. So I think that's quite interesting. But a lot of countries are doing it incredibly well. Germany do it incredibly well. There's actually a prison in Scotland doing it very well. It's a new one in Dundee called the Bella Centre. It's for women. It's a very humane prison. I was invited there. I went there last month, and they almost live in houses, and it's mentoring. The prison officers are mentoring them rather than them being stuck behind bars, because that's the problem. When people are behind bars all day, we're institutionalizing them. So when they come out, they don't have a clue how to act.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. Have you had any experience in American prisons?
I haven't been to American prisons. However, there's a project called the Amend Project in America. So some states, the Amend Project works with Norway. So like I say, Norway's got a very humane prison system, and they use the principle of normality. So that came into effect in the 1980s. And it means that prisons must replicate the outside world as much as possible, just so that people can reintegrate back better. So a lot of states in America are actually doing that. And there's a man I know in America. He used to be a prison governor, and he started a business where he wants to create social profit prisons. So obviously private prisons get bad rep because we should not be making profit out of people's suffering. And he's creating prisons in America where, although they're private, all the money gets reinvested back into the prisons. So America are doing a lot wrong with prisons. However, they are doing some things really right. I mean, Colorado, they used to overuse solitary confinement, and actually somebody was released from solitary confinement into the community and actually shot and killed the executive director of prisons at the time. So after that, a lot of reforms came into place, and they've totally overhauled the way they use solitary confinement. So although they have a long way to go, there are a lot we can learn from a lot of countries as to how to do it better.
That's not Bro Enterprises that you're referring to.
The private prisons, social profit corrections.
Yes.
Yes.
Do you know
about it?
Yeah.
Brian Kane.
A little bit. I was at the School for Social Entrepreneurs with Matt, who started the Freedom Bakery project.
Oh, wow.
And when I worked for Senscott, we did some research into it. Yeah.
Incredible. So I had Brian on my podcast.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah, but incredible work that they're doing.
Yeah.
There are a lot of people around the world who really care about making prisons a better place.
Yeah.
And it's nice that it's now getting that traction. I mean, 5 years ago, people weren't really thinking about dynamic security, for example, which is just where, rather than focusing on static security of cameras and gates and bars on the windows, it's really about fostering relationships. So the prison officers really get to know the people in prison, and that's what dynamic security is, so that you are there with them so you can see if things are going wrong. It's encouraging them to behave better because they know you're around. People weren't really talking about that in prisons 5 years ago, but now people all around the world are opening up to the fact that treating them badly is not working anywhere, so we need to try something different.
That's really good to hear. It feels like such a long time coming of kind of having awareness that we were getting it wrong because of, well, statistics, if anything else, never mind that kind of humane element of things. But I think it's a big complex problem, isn't it? And a lot of people just didn't know where to start, or I think it's easier just to kind of keep doing the same old stuff and turn your eye again. You know, it doesn't have to concern me, so
Yes.
I'll look away.
And that's the problem, because in society, prisons are behind walls, aren't they? You often don't see them. So it's easy, if you don't see something, you don't think about it. You don't tend to think about it until you're confronted with it. And that's what happened with me in my undergraduate degree. I did 2 years of studying on it that I thought, now that I know this, I can't sit here and not do my part. But it's easy not to look at it if you don't know anything about it.
Absolutely. But oh my gosh, it just impacts us all, doesn't it? I mean, it speaks a lot about who we are as people.
Yeah, I can't remember the exact quote and who said it, but there's a brilliant quote that said you can judge the decency of a society by how they treat the people in their prisons. That's definitely not word for word. It was much better than that, but that's the premise of it, that look at how a prison is and that'll tell you a lot about the society.
Absolutely. I think it's true. I mean, I think there's a phrase about the kind of the neediest people in society and how they're treated, basically the most vulnerable people. That is a reflection of what kind of culture and society you have. And yeah, it's good to hear. I don't know enough about the prison system, so it's good to hear that some countries are doing it well and we can learn. So I'm curious how your Rise of Happiness head influences your other work and vice versa, and how they come together. I know they influence each other, but on a practical level, do they? Or?
So Rise of Happiness magazine is actually in a number of prisons around the UK for staff specifically. However, the Bella Centre that I told you about in Dundee, some of the prisoners there have actually read it as well. So it's very community based. The prison officers there are absolutely incredible. I was blown away by how brilliant they are. They're a credit to the Scottish Prison Service. And they sit down with the prisoners and do a lot with them, and they sat and read parts of the magazine to them. And I think that's just beautiful, because I think the magazine can benefit anyone, because if you're human, you want to care for your well-being and live as good a life as you can.
Absolutely. Yeah, I love it. Would love to hear about a personal experience where you were left feeling of awe, or when you're in a state of flow. We just like to talk about these topics, and again, it feeds that kind of happiness, good feelings, all the good hormones being created.
So probably going back to the prison narrative, but probably doing my podcast. So I started that off the back of my master's degree, where I researched prison officers, and a lot of them said that nobody thinks about us. The public don't know much about us. So that's why I started the podcast, just to bring awareness to what's going on in prison, and to try and maybe selfishly make people think, oh, this is going on, I want to do my part. Because I feel like if society make it clear that they want change in prisons, politicians and things, of course they want to then, make society happy. So I think it's important that people know about it. But anytime I do a podcast, I just get so into the flow, and I feel so blessed that so many people share their vulnerable stories with me. I have all sorts of people on the podcast, but prison officers and governors, but I also have people who have been to prison. And I had a man recently who served 17 and a half years in America for he was driving, and he actually killed 2 people. He was drink driving, and it's absolutely terrible that happened. However, while he was in prison, he actually ended up getting a master's degree in drug and alcohol addiction and how he can help people. So he's now a drug and alcohol counsellor, because he wanted to ensure that this never happened again. And the family of the people who died actually reached out to him, and they were so grateful to know that he was doing this work. And he was just so vulnerable with me on the podcast and got very emotional recalling stories. And he said to me, I've never been this open with anyone about my story, and I just don't take that for granted. I feel very blessed every time that I finish a podcast that people talk to me. I'm just a stranger, they don't know what my motive is. So anytime I do a podcast, I feel in flow and just very blessed.
I love that. And what important storytelling to share. Tell us your podcast name, please.
It's called Evolving Prisons.
Evolving Prisons, yes. Yeah. So we can find you on all the podcast places.
Apple, Spotify, the usual. Yep.
We'll definitely include a link. That's really wonderful. I love that you are, I suppose one, doing the work, but also, you know, sharing the stories that you're experiencing, you're hearing, and also the other side, to the people that work there as well. I think you're right. Quite often, same with carers and other people in that kind of service industry, aren't paid well. I think if we flipped everything around and we paid the people doing that kind of work the pay they should be being paid, then things would be a lot better and different, wouldn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the thing, the pay is just such a tiny part of it, but if we could at least pay them better, it just shows that, you know, because the work they do is so difficult that they definitely do not get paid enough. As you say, a lot of people, we couldn't live without carers, we couldn't live without nurses, doctors, we couldn't live without prison officers, because they do incredible work that we don't even think about and we don't see. You know, during the pandemic, for example, frontline staff were given free coffee by a lot of different cafes, and what a beautiful initiative, but prison officers weren't included in that. And I know prison officers went to claim theirs and they were told they weren't included, and how horrible that must feel when we're all safe at home and they're putting their life on the line every day and society doesn't even include them as a frontline worker when they are. They're no different. You could argue, or they argue, a few of them have said to me that what we do is actually more difficult than the police force, because the police force deal with these people for an hour or two and that's it. We sometimes need to be with these people for 10 to 20 years every single day. So society will see a murderer or a rapist put behind bars and think, brilliant, done and dusted. But you don't think about the prison officers who actually have to deal with them every single day. And there are some people in prison who are monsters. We can't get away from that. We can't rehabilitate everybody. And these prison officers still have to treat them with such humanity and care for them. And that must be a very difficult job for them to do.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's a very highly skilled job.
Very. Yeah.
And obviously have huge impact and repercussions of how well they're doing that job. Yeah. And that's good to hear. I mean, I guess I didn't know what kind of training prison officers receive, so I'm sure I'm like many folk ignorant on that level. And
it's different around the world. I mean, just very quickly, in Norway they get 2 years training and they get a diploma in correctional studies and they can do a bachelor's degree. So they're, in comparison, they get roughly 2,160 hours of training to be a prison officer in Norway, and in comparison in Scotland they get roughly 270 hours. Wow. So it's an enormous difference to do the same job, to rehabilitate the most vulnerable people in society who no professional before them has been able to help. It's a massive undertaking.
Yeah, it is, isn't it?
Yeah.
Anything you want to add, Alice?
Yeah, I think just listening to it, I'm just grateful that we had this chat, because even for myself, that's a side of prisons that I've never even considered.
It's easy not to think about it, because why would you if you don't know people who've been to prison? It's not something you'd think about.
Yeah, it's definitely sort of like that throwaway society, but there's so much more there. Mm-hmm. And I guess as well, it's that compassion that you're talking about, where we don't want to be compassionate to these people. And then that also includes the people working there.
Yeah. And I get it, because we have that revenge element within us. The amount of people that say to me, but what if that was your family that was killed? What if that was your partner that was killed? And I get it. I would want the worst thing possible to happen to that person, because it's natural. But we all have that revenge element within us. And understanding that if we treat these people badly, 95% of them are going to get out one day. And if they get released and become your neighbour, do you want people who are bitter or better? It's not about you personally, although it's of course victims of crime, horrendous, but it's about the collective. It's about creating safer societies, and we're never going to create safer societies by treating people inhumanely.
Great, and we can't wait to kind of hear more from you around the Rise of Happiness. I hope that initiative carries on and grows however you want it to grow. Do you have a plan for how you want to develop Rise of Happiness, or is it going to stay a magazine and just hopefully implement it in lots of places?
So we do have lots of visions for it. So we want to incorporate events. So we'd love to do retreats, like foreign retreats, where for weekends people get together and we're doing exercise, paddleboarding, yoga, eating healthy, nutritious food, and really connecting on a deep level, because as I say, that's one of my core values, is to connect with people. So we have a dream of doing that. We'd love to create a Rise of Happiness journal. We would love to have a TV show, a travel TV show down the line. So we have big plans for it. But right now it's the magazine and really getting the word out about the mission, because it's deeply personal to us. Especially for my partner, Rob, he was a police officer and he dealt with a lot of trauma, and it kind of came off the back of that. So it's a deeply personal mission to us. So we do have big plans for it.
Lovely to hear. Oh, thank you so much for speaking with us today, and look forward to what else is next for you guys.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks again.
Thank you so much to Kaigan for joining us today. You can find out more about Rise for Happiness and Kaigan's podcast, Evolving Prisons, by following the links in our bio. To hear more about Tribe Porty and Keystone, you can find us on all social media platforms. Please head over to our website and subscribe to our newsletters, which includes monthly blogs to provide helpful insights into how we craft our working lives. This has been Working for Progress. We hope you join us again.